Welcome! It is Friday! We're live in the Nutmeg Tavern. Special guest today. What were we going to call you?
Whichever one.
Is it
Whichever.
H or is it...
Whichever you prefer.
H. Northrop. And behind the bar... Oh, wait a minute. I'm your host, John Townsend.
That's right.
Welcome to the Nutmeg Tavern. Come in, have a seat. There's lots of room. Actually, there isn't. Ryan.
Hello.
Behind the bar.
Good to be here today.
And on the other side of the time vortex, Aaron is on the console.
Yep. Hello.
Making sure it all works right. And Kyle is in the hot seat. He's taking the chat and the questions and all that good stuff.
Hello.
Yeah. We're
So-
gonna have to fix your lapel.
Here we are.
Well, what's wrong with it?
It's just not in a good spot, and it's jangling around.
We got a jangly lapel.
Yeah, we're trying lapels out today.
Trying lapels out. It's just
JH's isn't in a perfect spot.
Right.
He
Yeah,
did a great job.
I bet you he put it on too.
no. I
By myself.
I
It was amazing.
I put it on him. They're always trying to.
Is it fixed now, John?
I don't know.
No, it's just too far away, and it's not centered. But you
I can't
decided-
center it. I
There
can't
we
center
go.
it.
There we go.
There we go.
Let's
Okay.
So
chill
what
right
are we
there.
here to talk about today,
Yeah,
John?
yeah.
We're going to talk about all things horse. Are you
Awesome.
ready for
I
all
can-
things horse?
Let's give it a go. It'll round my day out beautifully.
So he's our resident expert, or semi-resident. He feels like sometimes he's a resident expert on all things horse, 18th century, and obviously, you can stump us, but
Easily.
don't try that. Obviously, I'm just like catching my breath because we got started a little late, and we're trying new equipment, and we have a
Got the
guest.
lapels. You got new lapels.
Yeah, well, then
It's been an exciting week.
it has. It's been
We got some new stuff in the mail that's going to be fun.
yeah.
We're not going to talk about it yet, but it's cool.
Because you guys help us out with the channel, we get to experiment and to make the quality of what we do even better. Thank you, and that's what he's talking about. Where do we start? Let's start with a couple random questions. Kyle, what do you have for us?
Okay, let's see. Hold on. There we go. Random questions.
Random.
All right. Would plants in the house be a higher status thing since you really need windows?
That's an interesting question. I don't hear a lot about plants inside people's houses using them for interior decorations.
I'd have to go look. I have no idea.
Yeah. Basically, I think that most of the time, the only thing that's really equivalent is when somebody is so well-to-do that they have their own greenhouse. And people like George Washington, he had greenhouses and he would grow things over the winter, even though he's down in Virginia, so it's not that difficult. But that's a pretty high end. And houseplants per se, I don't think I've ever seen any in paintings or anything.
Well, that's I'm trying to think back through paintings. Herbs hanging to dry.
Yeah,
But beyond
dry,
that,
but not
that's it.
living.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting question.
This one says, what did horse equipment and feeding items look like in the 18th century? The bridle, the saddle, etc.
A picture question?
That's pretty hard to answer. I know.
Look it up. No,
Well,
you got a smartphone? Use it. No, it's interesting. The most common overall saddle, as far as Central and Western European influence, is what's called a demi-peak. Today, a demi-peak is more like what you see as a bullfighting saddle, is a place that still exists.
Okay.
The offshoots from that basic saddle, one is the English saddle, or the English or French hunting saddle, where they basically took the pommel and cantle off and made the tree smaller and just kind of compressed stuff down. The other direction you can go with it is actually if you start looking into like the Spanish saddles and you make a jump to what became Western saddles, but that similarity is only on the surface. The tree, the internal support structure is actually completely different.
Wow.
But you've still got the high front, high back, and the straight-legged approach. On the English saddles, what we call English saddles today, you'll see that the stirrup has actually moved a little bit forward. That came about in the 1880s, so mid-18th century, mid to later 18th century. You've got it. It's a little bit further back, and it's for a straight-legged seat. Your tack, as far as your bridle, you've got a bradoon, a bridle, watering collar or halter, what we call a halter today. The watering collars would be leather. The bridles were, generally speaking, fairly simple pieces, simple black leather, brown leather. It's when you get into the upper echelons of the aristocracy and that you start seeing stuff where you've got like red Russian leather tack. And where you've got, we were in Paris looking at pieces at the Musée de l'Armée in June, and they had saddles that were, you know, they're demi-peaks, but it's all cushions and embroidery and velvet and satin and stuff you look at
Imagine
going,
that
I
being
can't,
used.
yeah, it's like I can't get near that. You know, it's just like I
Turn all
attract
brown.
dirt. Yeah,
Yeah.
poof, you can see I touched it. But for the common pieces, you had the leather on them. If you go further east, you start getting into more of like the Turkic Hussar saddles. More recent equivalent that we've got is the McClellan saddle used in the American Civil War. That was a takeoff from the old Hussar and Kazakh type saddle. So that's kind of interesting. But that tree format, an interesting thing, when you start dealing with like Kazakhs and guys further east, they had this thing where they would actually take like a big pillow and cover it with leather or with whatever.
Sounds
and
like
actually
my kind of saddle.
attach it to the seat of the saddle so that you're actually sitting on this giant pillow
Yeah.
on the saddle.
Why aren't they all like that?
Well, you might still have horses if you'd had a saddle like that. That could-
Maybe. Okay.
but it's pretty simple, straightforward
Stop
stuff.
talking.
Look at that.
You
they
just
got
keep doing
iPhones.
this
Look at
forever
that.
and ever.
They got iPhones.
Don't interrupt him.
Man,
Hey,
Listen,
sorry.
Tiny.
I'm,
I'm looking down on your top hat. Don't you know?
I'm so glad that you're here today. I personally,
Did you just drink out of that pitcher?
You did. That's his mug.
I asked him if he wanted this mug or if he wanted a pitcher.
Ryan understands when you're large,
do.
there are things that you do
That's what
that
I
small
would've
people
thought.
don't get.
I think it's fantastic.
Relatively speaking, compare the pitcher to me and the mug to Monster.
That's why I
out here.
didn't notice it at first.
That's why it's like you have a pint glass and it's like, where's my beer? That's
right.
So you can see why I asked this gentleman on for horse questions, because he has a lot of knowledge. Tell me about where you come by.
I got a smartphone.
You're
Because
in
he's
depth.
like a horse?
No, you're in depth. Your history.
That's my history with this.
Yeah.
For the first 18 years of my life, my family was very involved with Tennessee walking horses, big show horses. And so I spent a lot of time immersed in that culture and traveling down south and learned a lot of neat stuff with that. And then we stopped doing that. And then I turned 30 and got a farm and married and kids and thought, hey, I want to get back into horses again. And discovered that when my grandparents were paying for it, it was a lot easier to do than when you're paying for it yourself.
Sure.
And with my interest in the historic stuff, I began digging around going, okay, how was this actually done?
How did two things come together?
Yeah, how was the actual equitation done? And it just kind of became an ongoing dig deeper and deeper and deeper and start finding questions like, straight leg versus bent legged. Seeing original paintings where the troopers' legs are more forward. Why are they that way? And then you realize, well, it depends what time period is it and blah, blah, blah. The evolution of the saddles, the evolution of the tack. Just a lot of neat, and then seeing, how things in Eastern Europe, when we began looking at Russian and Polish, Lithuanian Commonwealth stuff, how did that change and how did that affect what was happening in Eastern and Western Europe? And in return, coming down to the colonies, what did it look like here also? So it's stupid. I got bored.
Oh, but
That's the problem.
It's
I should
great.
never and I got a smartphone so I can look stuff up.
Right, and we look at the saddles today and all the horse equipment, and we think, well, it's always pretty much been like that, right? Except,
Oh no, it hasn't.
no, it hasn't at all.
No, it hasn't. No,
Right.
it's relatively recent. I mean, the modern Western saddle is very much a Southwestern thing, but the horses, like a modern quarter horse with the big round barrel body, is very different from the saddles those saddles were developed for, which tend to be a much narrower horse.
Okay.
So if you try to take one of those earlier saddles and it's like, well, this, my great grandfather used this down in New Mexico,
Right.
and I'm going to use this on my new big horse. The saddle's not going to fit.
Like a little tiny top hat on top of
and
somebody.
you're going to cause pain on the horse, and everything's going to go bad very suddenly. That's one of the things I like with the old demi peaks was that they were actually a fairly flat saddle, and you actually adjust it to the horse by filling the padding on the inside. So you could have a real narrow horse, you just filled it more. A real flat-backed horse, you filled it less. It was just kind of novel.
Hey, somebody was asking what the drink is today. There is no drink today. We're all drinking something different.
He's drinking.
I got lectured. Is this clean?
He's drinking something like a lemonade. Let's call it that.
That'll work. Iced lemonade.
With some fizz.
And John's drinking tea, probably?
Yes, I've got some wonderful chocolate oolong. Don't tell anybody.
And I am drinking... I'm drinking ale.
And he's drinking ale back there. Woo. Do we just go on to more questions?
Well, I think Aaron might have some donations. What do you think, Aaron?
Yes,
Yeah, I have
Aaron.
a few donations. And some of them have questions related to the topic.
Excellent.
Oh, great.
Perfect.
Let's
Perfect.
do some of those. And
I'll
thanks
write
to
down the
everyone.
questions as we go.
Yep. Thanks to everyone who's donated already. Keltoid5, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone asked about the expedition of Lewis and Clark yet?
I saw your question on Patreon. Yes.
Oh, there you go. Mandatory carry for whatever the lesson is. So just a donation for whatever we're doing. I like
Woo,
that.
thank you.
Thank you.
Lumpy Thumb, thank you.
That's a great name.
Yep. Were cloths or paper or some kind of natural vegetation used to cleanse the backside after some sit-down time? Thank you.
TP. Okay.
Gotcha. And I had to read that out loud.
Carefully
man.
said. I
You
like that.
passed one on.
I like that one.
Well, I realized what it was as I was reading it. Chris Nemec, or Nemec, thank you. Which breeds of horses were most common in the colonies?
Breeds.
And
Okay.
then
Oh, that's the whole thing.
Richard Healy, thank you. No question, just donation. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you.
guys.
So, Lewis and Clark, we haven't had any specific Lewis and Clark questions, although we've been talking about Lewis and Clark
I love
things.
Lewis
Well,
and
the
Clark.
Papa video was
Right.
related
Specific
to
to
Lewis
Lewis and Clark.
I'm always reading about Lewis and Clark, always in some book or another.
Yeah. Do you have any special Lewis and Clark information for us? Just some random. No,
They-
good.
They went west. Died later. It was-
Yeah. Well, everyone does.
yeah,
but
well, yeah.
sooner or
Makes it
later.
easy, yeah.
Come on.
If you give us some more. I wasn't quite sure where you wanted to go on the Lewis and Clark question, so we will definitely cover that more in depth, probably in full episodes here, coming up next season, because I'm interested in that. Of course, we have the canoe thing coming up and all that good stuff.
I was at the Falls of the Ohio a couple months ago, and I called John when I was there, and I said, "Hey, I'm here," and he said, "Great."
Yeah,
That's nice.
great. You're on vacation. Why are you calling me?
Yeah.
Toilet paper. I'm not sure.
Natural vegetation, I think, is the interesting one.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next question.
And
mean,
talk
something
about
really worth-
horse
worth
breeds in
digging
the
into.
colonies.
Horse breed, that is a whole nother discussion. Yeah, that is like holy crap. Because when you get into this discussion, you've got English influence, Spanish influence, Canadian influence, all coming in together. And with that, you've got different requirements for different uses of breeds or different uses of the animals. So in Canada, for instance, in developing what's today called the Canadian horse, which is a predominantly black colored breed, you've got a dual purpose animal. So it's for riding and for pulling, okay? According to Cavalry de Canada in the 59, 60, basically would have been most likely mounted on these horses. Even though the white, I think it's the white watercolors of Quebec after the English takeover, do show multiple colors of horses, the black ones today are what we know as Canadian
Predominantly,
horses. Yeah. When you get down into the colonies, and well, let's jump to the Spanish. You get to the Spanish area, now you're bringing in Iberian blood and potentially Turkic blood. You have to look at what all they had. The Iberian blood that came across, those are your classic war horses. Okay, so if you read de la Guerinière, if you read Newcastle, you'll find in there the horse that they're most likely using is an Iberian horse.
So is this a big war horsey
It's
kind
not,
of thing? No?
well, big to you or big to me.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
going to be a normal size horse to you. You know, they're about a
They're
15
tiny for
hand.
you?
They're really,
Yeah.
for me, yeah, they're tiny. I mean, they have, I know of a really nice large one I get to go ride here in a month, but in the period, they were actually, they were smaller. And so the cavalry horse at the time, you're looking somewhere, generally speaking, around 15 hands for heavy cavalry horse. And those horses are just very naturally balanced, able to shift directions very quickly. When you read about the conquistadors going into Mexico and South America, one of the things they don't tell you about in that is that these horses were actually trained not just to go forward, like you picture heavy cavalry charger, charge a lance and
yeah.
go. But these horses could basically go much like a bullfighting horse, which is trained along the lines these horses were trained, to go any direction. So they could be going forward and just as quickly and easily go ahead and make an adjustment to double around.
What was that?
And that's a
Some
strange
strange
sound.
sound.
Strange sound, yeah. Some idiot didn't do something. But those horses were actually trained so that the rider could engage not just forward, but they could actually have like 6 to 8 different engagement directions they could work.
That must be, I mean, just thinking about being able to fight like that. And it's like, no, I can make my horse go sideways, backwards,
Yeah.
you know, and it just, it's like, yes, do
No,
this.
it's insane.
Just by
It's
moving your
insane.
legs or whatever, and it knows what to do.
My horse is better trained than I can ride. And so there are times I'll give him a cue on accident and
Yeah.
so
Whoops.
discover that, you know, not the whole always backing up, it's that he's quartering back to the left. And then I've had it before, quarters back to the left and then spins
Right.
to face in this other direction. Not because he's being ornery, but because
He
that's
knows
the
his
signal
secret
I gave
language,
him.
yeah,
and
you
I'm
don't
like,
know it.
oh crud, that's what I did. You know, what was I thinking? Because the whole idea in looking at like classical equitation, which eventually became dressage, and some would say dressage is military equitation done poorly, but the whole idea with that is making it so that you can engage a target in any direction. And that breed of horse is very well balanced for that. You get to the colonies, we had the fascination with the thoroughbreds. We had some different ponies, like you can go and read in magazines or whatever about some of the different mountain horses, Native American breeds.
Sure.
There's allegedly some evidence, don't hold me to this, I've seen a couple articles on this now, I haven't delved into it yet, that there were potential residual horse breeds among Native Americans.
That weren't imported from Spain.
That's the allegation.
Wow.
So the Ojibwa being one of the nations. So I've been in touch with some of my Ojibwa friends going, okay, give me the rundown on
Yeah.
this. And he goes, well, I'm like, okay. I'm sure they're supposed to be doing some DNA work to track that and
Yeah,
figure out
you
what's
would
going
think that
on
would
with
be,
that. So,
yeah, you could figure that out.
but so you had a lot of small offshoot breeds, which are basically like the Chincoteague ponies, where they're just rough little horses that can survive on basically nothing. Because you have to realize North America, especially early 18th century, it's not a place for horses. Unless you are
Trees, yeah.
unless you're in the settled zone. Horses don't like nuts. Horses don't like dead leaves.
Right.
You know, we can read through the different accounts, whether civilian or military, about how the horses are losing their condition just traveling through.
Right.
So it's not a horse-friendly
Probably
area.
more oxen.
Yeah. Until you hit basically southern Illinois, Missouri area,
Plains.
where you've got Louisiana, the French territory there, because now you've actually got a French territory that's bringing in English horses, Canadian horses, and Spanish horses, raising them, breeding them, and selling them back off again. Which is just, at that point, you take the whole North American horse concept and scramble
Yeah,
it.
pour it in a blender and
Throw
off
it
she
out
goes,
and see who buys what.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
and a lot of that becomes, frankly, like what survived by that point. It's not so much a breed thing. The guys back on the coasts, they can afford for like the George Washington types, and where actually the mounted hunting is quite a bit in use.
Sure.
You know, for those guys, you're getting more into the thoroughbred types, where you can do more of the what we would today consider the mounted hunting, the hunter jumper stuff. And that can only really be done where you've got clearances. Prior to that, in Europe, what they actually were doing was taking horses more like the Iberian horses and using horses that can turn and dodge more and hunt through the forest with them. And you could move, because you can swivel better and engage, you know, your, whatever it is you're hunting, the stag, the hawk, the boar, the whatever. Then you get over here, we've got the open clearances on the coasts, and now the horses can actually, you can do more of a forward horse, more of a go straight, jump, do whatever that way, because you've actually got the space for it.
I'm going to
And
move to some more questions from Kyle.
That's really awesome, though.
Yes.
That's great.
Sorry.
No. It's like,
My job is to move along sometimes, but that doesn't
That's
mean that
fine,
you're
that's
doing a
fine.
bad
no,
job.
that's fantastic.
That's great.
Okay, so if you didn't have a barn, where did you keep your horses?
Well, there's the question. We keep ours outside.
Right. I mean, you see them just standing in the field. And
Yeah,
they like a
that's-
flat spot. They don't like hills. Right?
Horses will naturally move to an area, like if you've got a large open pasture, they're going to naturally move to an area that's going to be more sheltered according to what's going on. You know, they're going to turn their butts to the wind, lower their heads, and go from there. I had a gelding at the farm at one point who hated to use the trompe sheds, and if a storm came in, he was out in it. To the point that
Snow stacking up,
we had
yeah.
this blizzard. Well, we had this blizzard blowing, and I walked out thinking, "Oh my God, my horse is dead," because I can't find him. And then all of a sudden, the snowdrift blew up, and there's this monster gray gelding, literally, looked like he was smiling and laughing as he blows up this snowdrift and goes over and jumps in another one and jumps in another one. He just stayed out in the elements all the time. Yeah. We've had other horses that would stay, in the shed or in the stall all the time. Jump to the period. Basically you keep them outside if you don't have a stalling for them. There's a whole story about how the Russian horses were developed and that they'd be ridden hard in the wintertime, ridden hard by the boyar from one place to the next. They dismount, they leave the horse tied up out in the cold, go inside, drink, come back out, hop on the horse, ride hellbent for leather to the next spot, do the same thing. And the horses that actually survived this are what they bred.
Yeah.
And
that's the horse I want.
That's where like the Don horse, that's where that comes from, theoretically, is that kind of use. So
Great.
How did ships transport livestock and/or horses?
Well, they would pick them up with a sling off the dock, using one of the spars, I think's the term.
Yeah, these
Swing
one of the
them
arms.
across, one of the arms, bring it across, set it down in, and basically they'd have box stalls below deck. Go ahead and set the horses in for transit, and just bring them across that way, then take them out. It's just reverse the process.
How did the colonies have draft horses? How did the colonies use draft horses for farming in the 18th century?
The same way we do today.
Yeah.
Just with that, they didn't have like the manure spreaders and wheeled stock like we have today. You're hitching up very similar tack, having to go ahead and pull the log, pull the wagon, pull the cart, pull whatever the case may be, just as we would today. Just the draft horses of the 18th century were smaller than what we think of today as a draft horse. Today we've got like 3 sizes in each breed, like a small, medium, large. Small being roughly 15 hands, medium being 16 or 17 hands, and large being 18 and up. And a hand is 4 inches, so so you
And
measure
you probably
to
use
the
the
ground.
double XL.
I like horses that make me look normal size.
Yeah.
So Ryan could ride my horse, no problem. You would look like a kid dancing on an aircraft carrier. So, so the horses, if you wanted to get like a more appropriate size horse for an 18th century draft horse, you'd actually be looking more towards like the smaller size draft horses of today.
Did they have horse shows like we do today?
They had races.
Yeah, races.
When
That
you
was
get
another
into
question.
when you get into the aristocracy, that is where you get into something called carousel. And carousel was where these different people would come together, and then they would show off what they could do. And there were some different competitions that would take place. But it was basically having a show. Everybody's on horseback watching everything. You're having a show at the same time.
It's weird.
I cannot win on this thing.
I can't. It's like some sort of
We're
poltergeist
gonna,
in here.
We're going to kill this ghost.
Well, I'm gonna say when Dave Taylor was here, his phone quacked.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Somebody just commented that you just shaved the horns off of a moose and ride it.
I've got a moose story, but I can't tell it in here. So
Well, that's good.
Let's finish that thought, then we got a couple of house cleaning things to do.
cool. Which thought? The moose thought?
No,
Whichever.
the size of the draft animal? Is that what
Well,
was
no, we're talking about races.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
races.
races,
Okay.
that's right.
So the one thing basically could become what you would consider a show, but that's a very high level thing that's taking place. The races, on the other hand, you had races like Ascot and whatever else over in the UK that are still taking place today. Over here, oftentimes they could be something as simple as 2 people deciding they want to go and see whose horse is faster. They could take place at county fairs. They were
Sunday afternoon.
yeah.
It's like after church. Hey, let's race our
Yeah,
horses.
exactly. Because it's what else?
Everybody's together.
They didn't have smartphones. They
Right.
do something.
Everybody's
So, yeah.
together. Let's have,
They would
let's have
also
some fun.
pull
Yeah.
against each
Yeah.
other's horses too, correct? Who
They-
which one was stronger?
You could have some of that too.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're humans. We like to compete, and anything we can do to compete.
Make other things compete.
All right, real quick.
Yes.
Let's do some housekeeping.
Yes.
Let's talk about Patreon, folks.
Every week I go through the Patreon things, and a lot of folks, more than 500 folks, support us on Patreon, just a little bit of money each month. The brand new Patreon supporters, Sharon, Rob Poole, Cooper Powers, John Kelly, Murray Keichelstein. That one was tough. I was like, okay, how do I pronounce that? Also, some folks just say, hey, maybe it's better to do a one-time thing, and they send us money via PayPal. The link's down in the description section. Terrence Babelich. I don't know if you had Scott Macbeth and VL Bentley. Super. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And let me tell you, this always goes to, it's like Aaron says, I need this new piece of it. It's like, okay, Aaron, how much money did they give us in PayPal or, Patreon? Can we do that? And that's what makes great looking videos. Yep. So thank you guys. Especially all you Patreon supporters.
We just got some new stuff that we're real excited about.
We're excited about.
Fun.
We're excited about.
Thank you, Patreon.
The other thing that we need. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm interrupting.
Yeah. So these two. It's all right. Thank you, Ryan. You were going to remind me. Nutmeg Tavern mugs. Neither one of these are actually Nutmeg Tavern mugs, but they're like. There's one over there. That black one.
This one?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got some.
stuff in
We're going to be. Yeah.
Oh.
Liquid in it.
Is it moving?
Let's just go ahead and say that John's mugs don't always get cleaned out.
Hey.
And the bar doesn't always get cleaned perfectly.
I was going to say.
But this is a fine establishment. You should be happy to be here, Mr.
Right, he's cleaning the
I'm ecstatic.
glasses
I'm
even
ecstatic.
now. Anyway, we will have some Nutmeg Tavern mugs available. Ooh, you might get them before Christmas. Oh, the timing is really tight on these guys. Anyway, what's going to be available? The peacock color. This style, there's going to be a small one and a big one. And one of them, the small one's going to have the boar's head design on it, like the Black Cup has there. And then there's going to be a bigger style, this size, and that will have the jumping stag design. Those some of them will be available, and you could get them right before Christmas, depending on just exactly how everything gets delivered. But they're going to be available. They're on pre-sale right now. I don't have them in my hands, or I'd show them to you. And there's a link in the description section, right?
And
a link
chat
for the pre-sale.
Yep.
The story on these mugs is this is no joke. Like, if you want to get one, you need to get it as soon as you can because they do sell out.
Because I can only buy so many.
Right.
I don't want to get a billion of them.
Right,
So there's the mossy brown color. I really enjoy this color. And then of course we think everyone's actually going to like the peacock color even more.
Usually, whatever John's favorite is the least.
Right. I choose the ones I think this is going to be great, and everybody does the other one. But again, 2 sizes, 2 different designs, and they're really popular. I'm not. Should I say anything about? No, I'm not.
Nope. So Aaron's got some donations. I think we'll move that direction and get back into questions.
I do. Again, thanks everyone. We have some really nice donations today.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, also, I'm sorry. A lot of people are saying Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
It's that
We are
time of year.
excited. Yes.
It's nice.
It
Sonia's
is.
decorated all over the place downstairs. It looks great.
And that's why I'm wearing blue.
Am I going?
Yes.
Max are cool. Thank you.
Max, thanks.
Appreciate it. What was the most common breed of horse in 18th century North America, and what were they frequently used for? Nutmeg for life. Thank you. Very nice donation. If you had a horse, what would you name it, and why would it be Nutmeg? Think about that one.
I'll think about it.
Speed and Style Tony, thank you.
What was that, Aaron?
Speed and Style Tony, thank you. How much cavalry was used in the Revolutionary War? I know the British had 2 regiments, but heard that they fought as light infantry in the war. Gerard Conley, thank you so much. Thank you for all the work you do. My second book, a novel in the 18th century, would not be possible without the texture of history you provide. Big fan here. That's awesome.
Glad you enjoyed
Thank
that.
you. Thanks for
Yes,
watching.
thank you.
Keltoid 5, thank you.
Yeah.
Did horses have physical differences that we can see in old paintings but would not see today? All right, thanks everyone.
Ooh, that's actually a fun
That's a good question.
That's a
Okay,
fun one.
we'll hold that one for last.
What was the first one?
Common breed.
I have no
Most
idea.
common breed.
No idea.
Yeah, I don't know either.
No idea.
That's a tough
They
one.
weren't necessarily thinking in terms of breeds, and the most horse use that you're going to have at that time is a mix and match to meet local needs.
Right.
So for every George Washington Thoroughbred, you're probably going to have 20 mutts that
Right.
just are used for whatever local situation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really have no idea on that one.
Right. So the Heinz 57 horse is going to be
Probably,
the one.
yeah,
the
Heinz
most common.
57. You know, your basic mutt.
What horse would you, what are your horse names like?
Well, my gelding's name is Milinki Briati Express. So it's
Which
Russian
means-
for Little Brother Express.
Oh, I thought it was something to do with nutmeg.
No, sorry, I'm afraid it isn't.
But John's horse would be named after Nutmeg.
That's
That
Mine would be
probably-
Nutmeg
that
Express.
That would have to be.
Nutmeg
It would have to
Nutmeg
be.
Express.
Nutmeg
It'd have to be a
Express.
pony. It'd be a
Okay,
nice
so
little horse.
we need to make a Christmas-themed full-length feature called the Nutmeg Express.
Oh my gosh.
Who's on board?
Let's move on to the next question.
Picture a little brown
Cavalry. Cavalry in
In the colonies, the Brits had basically 16th and 17th Light Dragoons. They had Tarleton's troops running around. There were a lot of small units running around. Some of the stuff, even if you go through, you won't realize it until, like if you're reading about some of the militia guys like in Pennsylvania, and it's, they're infantry because they're militia, and then you realize, wait a minute,
They're light horse or something.
they covered this ground entirely too quickly to be on foot, and then there's reference to lost horses or tack or what have you. So they're not actually cavalry, they're just more dragoons, mounted infantry going from point A to point B.
Yeah, tell me about
from what
that
I've been
first.
able to see, there's a lot of bits and pieces of that all over the place.
So I think let's it's gonna make this one short, right? I'm
I'll try, whatever.
No, okay. So tell me about the different levels of cavalry and the interesting names. This is like we think, oh, it's cavalry, and
Like the
yet
types
there's-
or whatever?
Right, exactly.
Oh gosh. You've got like heavy cavalry, cuirassiers, or horse, regiments of horse in the English establishment. That's just big guys on big horses. Easiest, the old Scots Greys description, big men on big horses.
And they mostly saber
And that's
kind of guys. Or,
sabers are the bulk of their primary weapon for about everybody. Okay, so you've got that, but it's more of a straight sword. So right in, hack slash. Cuirassiers have metal breastplate. British didn't have them. French did. Pretty much everybody else in Europe did. Brits are very good at heavy horse and heavy infantry. Everybody else would go and have cuirassiers and other mix and match stuff. So those are your heavy shock troops. They got the breastplate. Oftentimes they've got a secret or a helmet hidden inside their hat. Regular have a tricorn, trigolka, and have metal piece hidden inside there to keep their head safe. That's the bulk of wounds that you find on hospital records. The first place they get them is the head. Second place they get them is the right arm. Third place is left arm. Hussars, which are light cavalry, light dragoons, which are basically light cavalry like hussars. They're supposed to be going out, scouting, seeing what's going on, harassing flanks and rear of the enemy, whatever, along those lines. Then you've got lancers, which are guys that have got like 10-foot lances, which can be kind of a heavy cavalry, light cavalry thing. They make jump back and forth. Dragoons, which are people who basically, theoretically, they ride to battle on horseback, dismount, fight on foot.
with muskets or short carbines.
With muskets, yeah. By mid-18th century, basically like the 7th, in the 7 Years' War, I think it was the 7th Dragoons of the English actually dismounted and fought on foot. Elsewhere in Europe, I know of some Russian units that did. I think that was about it, that were still functioning in that dragoon role.
Okay.
And then, those are the primaries. Everything else is basically permutations off of that. So if
So
that
there's
makes sense.
kind of like
Yeah.
good.
You got some more.
Oh yeah.
to
Whew,
read.
boy. Sorry. This is.
This is awesome.
What's the physical things going on with horses that
physical.
we might see in
There's,
paintings but we don't recognize.
They're I'm trying to think. In Newcastle's text, and in De la Guerinière, because De la Guerinière basically copied Newcastle, they actually will go through and show an example of different breeds. And there are several breeds in there that no longer exist, that they're just the physical type. Although I saw one, actually over at the old fort several years ago, a guy had a mutt that had the same physical characteristics as, I think it was called a Neapolitan breed at the time, a Neapolitan. But it's a lot of the stuff, when you're breeding horses, you're breeding them for a purpose. And you're going to have horses that are going to excel in different areas, and they're going to tend to keep together body type-wise. So, a breed is basically a collection of body types that are all within certain parameters. So a lot of the stuff where at the time they may not have had a name for the breed. Today we do. It's kind of like with dogs. You know, an English Mastiff in the 18th century is called what? You know, well, it's a Mastiff, but there's a wide variation. They all kind of fit within these parameters. So today, a lot of them we wouldn't call Mastiffs. But if you look at, like with the horses, you're going to see that there's variation in there. The stuff that didn't have names then that we give names today. A modern American quarter horse, people in the 18th century would look at it and go, "Do we eat that?"
Yeah, what is that thing?
You know, and if you bring in a halter horse, they're going to think, okay, that's, you know, if you have it in Quebec, they're eating it out of hand. Down here, you know, probably look at it and go, why is that horse so big? That's a waste.
Who's got all that food to feed that horse?
Yeah, exactly. Why are you doing that? So there's you know, I don't know if that necessarily answers the question, but there are a lot of physical traits that at the time were not necessarily breeds.
Right. Well, I think the same thing happens in something like dogs, right? So we have all these different dog breeds, and they all go down into, it's like, well, really, we only had maybe, you know, 20 dog breeds, and today we have 200.
Yeah.
And they all get specialized.
We had a Mastiff, and now we have a Pug.
Yeah. They all get specialized out of those earlier breeds, and yeah, so it makes total sense.
Was that everything?
Was
Yes.
there one more? What's this one?
No, that's the physical characteristics. The person is
one here?
Keltoid 5.
Oh, okay,
I just
okay.
wrote down.
All right. What's going on back there?
He's
No more for
Pouring
him.
drinks.
No more for
Yeah.
him, thanks. He's
Skimming
standing.
off the top.
Just the bartender having his day.
He's on the fourth one.
3, Kyle.
Kyle, next question.
Were horses used in farming on the frontier? I think we've covered that, didn't we?
We covered some of that, and I think really in that kind of setting, you're going to see more oxen being used, and we don't think about oxen all that much, but there are a lot more.
That's I would couch it as depends. You've got people that were using them. We know that they're being used. Even the over mountain boys and living, you know, someplace they don't send daylight had horses.
Right.
So you know that they're back in there. They're multi-use breeds most likely. So would expect that they're actually going to have some use, but they're not going to necessarily have the use that like a brace of oxen are going to have. If you've got your Anglo-Germanics are going to most likely be loath to eat the horse, whereas not so loath to eat the oxen.
Yeah.
So it makes the oxen more usable.
So we haven't touched on the topic yet. Tell me, what do you have on pack horses?
I prefer wagons.
Well, I think it's one of those
Really
things we
prefer-
don't think about very much.
No, you don't. But like if you go through and study like Forbes expedition, study Colonel Bouquet, 1st Battalion, 60th, 1755 to 65 when he dies in, was it Pensacola or whatever. He goes in and he talks about, in his records, they talk about all the pack horses that are being used to bring supplies back and forth. They talk about the life expectancy of these pack horses. They talk about where they actually have hay stored up for the horses to get through. They talk about, you know, as they're going, there's a whole discussion about whether or not to use pack horses with the Army as it advances. They're, 63, 64. And they end up taking oxen with carts, actually, rather than taking the horses, because you can have the 2 oxen and the cart of wood and the flour, and basically that is an eating unit right there. You've got theoretically the wood can cook the oxen and the bread from the flour, and that's consumed.
It's like a loaf of bread on wheels.
Yeah,
Yes.
literally. I mean, it was consumable. They would go through, and you know, once they got done with everything else, they began consuming those.
But something like a pack horse can go places where your
right.
wagon's
the wagons
never going
can't.
to go.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
right.
But it's flip side. Here's a flip up over near Warsaw, which we're not too far from here. There is a tract of virgin forest. Okay, that tract of virgin forest has 7 trees in it. Okay, those 7 hickory and white oaks we could drive a semi through and not hit anything. Okay, so if we took a horse and wagon in the virgin forest type that we have here, considering if it's dry ground, not swamp holes, you're going to be able to get through there no problem without hitting anything. So the pack horses give you extra flexibility in that when the brush gets tight.
Or
be
you're
able
in
to get through
mountainous,
there. Right.
high, you know,
As
Yeah,
folks are moving west
Right.
through Appalachia.
Yeah.
you can't get a wagon through there. I mean, you can't drive a car there, even now.
Yes. I've been to the Cherokee Res. Yes.
All right, let's go on to another question.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Did they have veterinarians to care for animals?
Regiments did. I don't know about civilian use, to be quite honest. Regiments and like regimental stables had vets. I would guess there had to be somebody in private practice, but I honestly have not run across anything private practice. Have you seen
I
anything?
think there are
You see more
people
of
that end
stuff.
up specializing in that. It's like, oh, you need to go and talk to old Farmer Joe because he's good. I don't think there's a like profession like training.
Not like the doctors of the time.
Yeah, I think
or
it's more like midwife training, right?
Okay.
It's like
Yeah, see, I have no idea.
yeah.
How was horse manure handled back in the day? I imagine an awful lot of it must have been all over the streets at the time.
With a pitchfork.
And it was something that is
was all
is
over.
a problem. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, a good thing because it's very useful.
But it's one of the things like I've looked at, and John and I have discussed this before, where I've got one of the issues I have with historic interpretive events is that there's not there are not horse apples, there are not cow pies, there aren't sheep running through there. The whole livestock aspect is missing. The whole thing's been cleansed.
Oh yeah.
Flip side, we've done some experiential programming, and I've had people walk in and step in road apples and begin to pitch a fit. And I'm looking at them going,
This is exactly
did you
what it
see
was
the
like."
calf scouts over here? Yeah, the horses do this. This is what happens. So in the period, I have not seen actual reference to anything yet, but I'm going to guess they came through basically with pitchforks and scoops like we would today, and at some point clean it up.
Yeah, there are some paintings of a simple, two-wheeled carts,
Okay.
with the stake sides and
Just throw it
filled
in
up
and go.
with yeah.
Dung carts or what would they?
Yeah. And they might even be, night soil. They might be from horses. They might be from.
Well, I'm sure that it's used then.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
It's just like
It
when
goes-
the city comes and mulches up all the trees and leaves and crap in your yard. Those things go to they're used by other
Yep.
folks.
Yep.
Were Clydesdales used on the farm more often than other breeds?
Clydesdales came into existence basically in the 1880s. So as far as an 18th century breed, no. They weren't used at all because they didn't exist yet. That said, there were some horses that had similar colorings and body types that would have been pretty much straight up ag animals. The Clydesdales were bred to pull big carts, big wagons. So these animals would have been, just big draft stock.
Well, let's talk about, and you might not know this, but the cost of a horse versus the cost of oxen. And
10 to 12 pounds for a calf wise, 10 to 12 pounds for a horse.
Which is about the same as a rifle. Like a
Yeah.
low-end rifle.
Yeah,
Okay.
a musket be a pound, rifle be 10 to 12 pounds. Horse is 10 to 12 pounds and that's a calf replacement horse. I have no idea what an ox price would be.
No.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that would probably go a lot into whether or not people were choosing to use big horses or use oxen.
That's if you've got a cow, you can hitch a cow to a cart or to a wagon, and she can still have calves and still give you milk.
Right.
And that's the dual purpose breed. So many of the cattle breeds that we had at the time, we didn't have big Holsteins, we had dual purpose. So that cow can go ahead and give you calves, and you can milk them, you can eat them, you can do whatever. Again, in dealing with Western, Central and Western Europe, we tend to have an aversion to eating horses. Yes, it does
So they're
happen.
single use
But
kind of thing,
it's more of we can ride it, and it can pull stuff, and it can have babies that we can ride and pull stuff. But the idea of eating it becomes if everything goes completely horribly wrong,
Yeah.
we can still eat the horses.
Right.
So, and there's also the issue of just plain what you can feed it and whether it will die.
Yeah.
And an oxen is much harder to kill.
Very
than a
hardy,
horse.
very hardy. They've done that. I've read of pieces where they're talking about if you want quick speed over a short distance, you use the horse. If you want the distance covered, a longer distance covered in a timely manner, you go to oxen. So the oxen don't wear out nearly as quickly as the horses do.
Aaron, are you needing some donation time? Or are you good?
I mean, I've got some, but we can. What time is it? Well,
You want to cover them now and then get some
yeah, let's
questions
just
off
do
at
them
the
right
end?
now. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Amazing.
Trevor. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
Let's see. What was the last one? Caltoid 5, I believe. So, Lumpy Thumb, again, I think.
Yeah.
Wow,
Thank you.
you.
Got my stag mug. Who else got one? Thank you.
Nice.
Got a few comments, people saying they got some. Appreciate it.
Excellent.
History with Brad, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey,
Got reenacting the American Long Hunter from the store, and I'm excited to read it.
good.
Awesome.
David Lee says Nutmeg Express would get my vote. History with Brad says, can you wish myself and Cruel Heated a happy birthday?
Yes. Hey, happy birthday.
Well,
We'll get it through right now.
Happy birthday.
happy birthday. Sir Frederick, thank you. Aaron C., thank you. Coco the Rabbit. Merry
Okay.
Christmas from a gentle bun in Wales, UK. Right on.
Yeah, Wales. Okay.
Kevin Moore, thank you. Former cavalry trooper here.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Cohen Genesis, not entirely sure. Sorry if I butchered that. Thanks for the channel. In Belgium, we have an iconic workhorse called the Brabants Trekpaard, a pole horse. They're relatively short but very muscly. Any of those make it over to the U.S.? Sir Frederick again,
Not
thank
aware
you.
of.
I'm with the 2nd Light Dragoons. Do you know any other dragoon regiments in the USA? Meant to ask on the first donation. Thank you. What else do we got?
One just popped in there, I think.
Yeah, Head Crab. Thank you. And that's all I got right
There
now.
he
Wow,
is.
thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Amazing.
Yep.
On the Belgian question, the Draben, not that I'm aware of. Those are really neat horses. They're made for wet ground, if I'm remembering correctly. I want to say they're also blue. But they're really neat, really well-muscled horses. If you go online and look at European draft stock videos, you'll see a lot of Suffolk punches and you'll see a lot of the Drabens. But then I'm aware of they really haven't made it over here. They definitely haven't made it big in the draft horse community. What was the second Dragoons?
Yeah.
That's there. Interpretively speaking, there are a lot of different cavalry units out here. He says he's doing 2nd Light Dragoons. What time period? If he's doing
Yeah,
Rev
so-
War, East Coast has Light Dragoons. The best I can say is look around, contact the Rev War societies for out there. Midwest, the Rev War Society has always been, allegedly until just recently, scared of horses. So, you know, if kind of depends where he is. If he's doing like 1840s, then I hope he's in the Southwest. And there are cavalry organizations out there he can get hooked up with.
Is there any 7 Years War or French and Indian doing cavalry?
French and Indian, not presently. I mean, we've got Kievsky Cuirassiers, which will be doing some neat stuff this year, finally getting
That's 7
horses
Years
out in
War,
public. That's
right?
7 Years War, Eastern Front. We're also considering playing around with some Corps de Cavalry du Canada just for the F&I stuff for the heck of it.
Sure.
So, I mean, there's a little bit of that, but again, interpretively speaking, when you bring a horse onto the field, you need twice the space you had before. So, we can go to an event and have a postage stamp battlefield and pile 40 guys on there and do a little battle thing, bang, 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 and that's all good.
One horse.
One horse, and that postage stamp is nowhere near big enough because you can cover so much distance so quickly. So with the F&I and the Rev War stuff, they really haven't been on sites where that can be done. So a thing that we're hitting with the European aspect of like 7 Years War stuff is we're having to push more towards experiential events and events where we actually have the ground to get the horse out and do stuff with it and bring out the draft stock. And just start doing some of the insanity that we've begun playing with there.
There we go.
So, to answer his question, no idea.
Yes.
You have to look, see where he is. So, got a smartphone? Use it.
Is that your favorite thing to say today?
It's
Got a smartphone.
within our group. That's a common phrase. It's got a smartphone. Use it.
Kyle, what do you
I'm
got?
going to go out on a limb and say that you have a smartphone.
What?
How would you know?
In that little bird I strangled earlier?
How did they deworm their horses?
There's some nasty, nasty, nasty stuff. I can't tell you the exact recipes now, but I've seen some of them, and I'm surprised it didn't kill the horses.
Tobacco? Does tobacco do that?
There was one concoction I saw that involved like green tobacco
Yeah.
and a bunch of other stuff mixed in. It's been
We don't want to be around
Scary.
when that goes into the horse.
that's that if you've got a horse and you're thinking I want to do the period approach to worming them, don't.
No, you don't.
Somebody in the chat said that tobacco was used, and I have heard that before.
I've seen that used.
How did horses in Washington's army compare to the horses in the British army?
Washington's army, could they be comparable? Should be comparable. I mean, because both of them were basically working off of the livestock that was here. Was it the Brunswick Dragoons that walked? I'm thinking, yeah,
Because
they couldn't have any stock. They didn't have stock here.
right.
So the cavalry was supplying it itself off of localized stock.
Ah, there you go.
So the horse flesh should be comparable.
Can you explain the difference between modern misconceptions of war horses and their actual body style?
Oh my dear God. Which time period, first of all?
Let's just say in our 18th century time period.
Mid-18th century, if you're looking at the ideal war horse, you're looking at a war horse that's somewhere between like 15 and 15.2 hands tall. He's going to be very well balanced. He's going to be able to basically, turn on a dime, either the front half, back half, whatever. He's going to be basically unafraid. It should be a bold horse, and/or a horse that's been able to be accustomed to fire, to gunfire, to blood, to death, to carnage. If you want to read how to train them, actually pick up Pembroke. Pembroke did a manual that was used by the British cavalry from the mid-18th century up through Napoleonic. Wow. It's a brilliant, brilliant piece. I mean, of course, there's the part about if you want to get a horse used to dead horses, you need dead horses to get them around. Right. But that's all stuff that's covered there. The overall, if you go a little bit back from that, you hit the idea of the Charger. And the Charger is a neat idea. And the Charger was a very, very expensive horse, but the Charger was like NASCAR. It went straight and turned left. And what you found is that the warriors, instead of using that, and this is even into the 17th century, rather than riding the Charger, they would switch over and ride what they called a courser. In the because the courser was more nimble, it was a lot cheaper, and it was that more compact, solid body, and it was also a horse they would often ride to hunt. So it was less bothered by a lot of this stuff going on, and a much more nimble horse. And the coursers what eventually became our modern cavalry horses, actually, because the Charger was basically go straight, turn left, and useless.
So real quick, we're going to talk about these mugs one more time.
Yes. A lot of people are, excited this time of year to maybe get something Nutmeg Tavern-ish. And in the past, we've had Nutmeg Tavern mugs. This year, we've got some mugs, but we ordered them just a little late. There's two different colors. So they're the small.
H can't hold them. He's like me.
I know he makes it look like
it's not a 3-ounce mug.
Yeah, it's
a Jill cup. So you give your room ration.
They won't let me hold product for photos ever.
Oh no!
big giant hand.
They're like, come on. The only thing I was allowed to hold was like the 7-pound axe.
Yeah. Well, it's like this.
And the
What's on
judge.
it? There's a handle.
Right.
There's a handle on the mug.
It won't break. I promise. Oh.
So there's a small size, a 12 ounce. It's going to be smaller than this, with the bore on it. This color and this color. And then there will be a bigger size, a 16 ounce. This size, they'll have the stag, the jumping stag design. That's a little more festive. Those guys are available for pre-order on the website because I don't have them to ship out right now. Probably be able to ship them out next Wednesday. So depending on where you're at in the United States, you might get it for Christmas or right after. Perfect gift for someone who...
When are you getting proper sized ones?
Oh.
So the mugs are festive.
Festive.
And they're fun. They're attractive. And if you want one, get it today. That's
Because a limited quantity.
Link in the chat.
Limited quantity.
And if you want it to get there in time, you just gotta believe.
And maybe you need some nutmeg, a jar of nutmeg to go with it. You can get that
Nutmeg
too.
in a bottle.
Are we ready for another horsey question?
One more question. We got to
Or
say
wait,
bye.
before we get a question, do you have anything that you think I want to tell them about this? Okay, Kyle, you can. I just want. Wait, no.
You said
Before we
be
get
here,
that,
so
no.
I showed up
Before
and
we
here
go
we
to Kyle, what are you doing right now? What's what kind of projects are you excited about? What are you working on?
God. As far as interpretive stuff?
Whatever.
No, interpretively, we've got the Kievsky Cuirassiers. We're reformed the Cuirassiers proper. as part of the diaspora. And so we've got, should have 4-5 horses out at the end of this coming campaign season, and which is exciting. But following campaign season, we should have 6 or 7. We've also just started a Russian galloper crew. So it's a mounted bombardier, 2 mounted gunners, and mounted drivers who will be pulling one of the Iditarod howitzers with the ammo cart to go into action, to be able to ride in.
That's
gunners dismount.
Pretty neat looking.
It's coming along. It's a fun project. It's one of those we're kind of looking around.
How big is the galloper? Is it just a little guy?
It's like a
4-pounder or something?
Yeah, it's just small.
Okay.
It's just small. The Russian we haven't built. We're going to build an actual Russian 3-pounder in time, but it's on a galloper carriage, but it's 2 mortars that go with it. And we want to actually do that out of bronze. So we're holding off on that, and so we're going this route. We got a lot of people that are excited that are talking it up and trying out, as it were, to be the gunners or be drivers. Got Russian naval section pontoons; those are in process. We're pulling the skin on one tomorrow out at my farm, and so that's exciting. And then we've got we'll actually have 2 pontoons going to next spring, and by mid-season we should also have a troop transport, so we can actually do boat landings.
Yeah.
So
You
and
can put the
fish off
horses-
of it too. Well, we're talking in time. We want to actually do one with being able to take some horses by boat. Just
that's gotta
because
be
it's
scary.
completely. Well, that's that we found some stuff with the Russians where they actually were taking like a series of pontoons and putting planking across it, and then putting up full-size field guns and the ammunition carriage and the horse teams.
Sort of like an aircraft carrier for horses.
Yeah, but it's, you're going along, so the whole time you're doing your crossing or your landing, the gun's in action, boom, boom, boom.
Wow.
But somehow apparently they've worn these horses out, or actually trained them enough that they're staying calm under
While
fire
they're on a boat.
with the pontoons, with the deck going in, the gun
That's
boom,
nuts.
boom, boom. And we're looking at that going, I bet we can do something similar.
Or someone
we're
was
stupid enough to try this.
Right. Or someone in history was going, this is crazy. In the future, somebody's going to try this.
Well, yeah.
So in the chat, somebody just commented and said that Ivy needs a pony. I thought I'd leave that there with you.
Yes, that's Nutmeg Express. Brown pony.
Right. Right.
And a sleigh.
You can keep that to yourself back there.
It might be time.
There's a sleigh at auction.
We
this
got
weekend.
one more. We got time for one more question.
Well, I got some donations too.
Okay.
Well, let's do a quick question. Then we'll do
Kyle,
it.
pick your best question.
Give it your best shot.
Okay, a lot of people have been asking about mules. Did they use mules in Jennies?
In North America, mules arrive later on the scene. It's either Washington or Jefferson was the first one, I believe, in the eastern colonies to have brought them in. South America, they had already been in use. Back over in Europe, Balkans and Mediterranean, and further east, Turkic regions, mules and jinnies were in use. But as far as, the American colonies basically follow Central and Western Europe on a lot of stuff. So the mules were relative latecomers. I want to say like 1784 or something like that, that they actually were first used, I'm aware of, in the North American colonies, what became the U.S.
Very interesting.
Nice.
What have you got, Aaron?
Just a couple quick ones, and then we're out. Jim Lindley, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
And then I gotta scroll up and find it. David Dinelli, great topic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Wow.
Yeah.
What
Merry
a great
Christmas,
episode.
everybody. Thank you
Yeah,
so
Merry
much.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, H, for coming in and giving us your horse crazy information. That was
Stuff.
taken years for you to accumulate that amazing knowledge.
So,
yeah.
H has done a lot more stuff
Yeah.
in the living history field
Yeah.
and experienced a lot more things on his farm. If you like him as a guest and you want him back, then comment and say so we know.
Oh yeah.
Because we
And if
definitely
not-
don't
Yeah,
want
more
him
stuff
back
to
in
talk.
this
we can
establishment.
fix it. We can lock the door if
I have
you know.
different outfits I can wear too.
Honestly, he had to come up against 2 locked doors before he found one that was open today.
That's right. That's right.
We tried to keep
But
him
I was
out.
ready to pick that lock too. I had to. So.
All right.
I want to thank everyone for your amazing help with the channel, your wonderful comments, and super chat and Patreon folks and the PayPal folks. You make it happen. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kyle, Aaron, Ryan, H. Merry Christmas, everyone. See you later.
Merry Christmas.